I'm Joe Collins. I'm running for Congress against Maxine Waters. Do you know where I am right now? Maxine Waters' $6 million mansion. Do you know where I'm not right now? Maxine Waters District.
Let me be real for a second. Don Lemon is a joke. He is a dumbass, just like Cuomo. Cuomo and his brother, the governor of New York, are both jokes. They're a disgrace to America, and so is his show. The Communist News Network having him on the show is a reason why a lot of people in our communities are confused about what's going on.
Party. South Central LA deserves a leader who will bring back value and opportunity. That's why Joe Collins is running to defeat radical leftist Maxine Waters.
She doesn't even practice what she preaches. That's like number one rule of law and speaking and leadership. You practice what you preach. She doesn't. And that's why it's so amazing to me to see you out here every day not giving up hope.
But these are things that we have to fight against. I mean, you know, with the suppression from social media, from conservative voices, and the lack of transparency and honesty from the Democratic Party, I think that the grassroots effort to be able to remove Gavin Newsom and have our voices heard is very strong right now.
The issue of California, and right now our city, our state, our counties are being destroyed daily by Gavin Newsom, and that's why this recall effort is so important.
So, you know, looking at the history of the Republican Party for Black people, you know, this is where we started at in politics.
Right.
So for me, it's getting back to where we started from as minorities. And then another thing is, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, because nobody at this point is looking out for the urban community. So it wouldn't matter if I was a Democrat, it wouldn't matter if I was a Republican. I know everybody like to think that the Democrats are doing everything for you, but I mean, like, if you go through our city, South LA, you still see gangs, you still see the poor quality job, poor education. We have homeless people everywhere.
Right.
And that's not even a Republican problem, because Democrats have been in here for a very long time. So, I mean, time for something different.
Joe Collins is a U.S. Navy veteran. He ran for Congress in California's 43rd Congressional District against none other than Maxine Waters. Find him on Twitter and Instagram at JoeECollins3. Joe, I'm very excited to talk to you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. How about yourself?
I'm doing very good, thank you. What trade were you in the Navy, by the way? I had trouble finding that.
I did a little bit of everything. I started off as a jet engine mechanic. I did a boots on the ground tour to Iraq. I was a recruiter, and I was also a sexual assault and rape victim advocate.
Great, that's good news. I was in the Army myself, so I was just interested in what trade you were in. So you were in the Navy for over a decade, I read. What made you want to get into politics and eventually run against Maxine Waters? Because that's a big name to go up against.
It is. Well, made me want to get into politics was actually President Trump, former President Trump. He ran a campaign, and I saw that the voice of the younger generation was not being heard. I don't think anybody who's 70, 80, 90 years old represents the ideas that I have of someone who is in my 30s. And so I ended my military career, and I want to run for an office position where I grew up in South Central, was that area, and Maxine Waters just happened to pull the short stick.
Yeah, and reading your platform from when you ran, I don't see a lot of those things being addressed. I mean, not specifically by Maxine Waters, of course, but by the Democrats in a whole. I mean, they say they're for these things, but a lot of the things you mentioned, like homelessness, for example, I can see it as a big problem there. Now, I want to circle back to October and play a bit of your campaign video, which I'm sure you've seen millions of times. Over 1 million of people have seen it. But I think what you say in there will always stay relevant. Justin, can we get to that clip?
I'm Joe Collins. I'm running for Congress against Maxine Waters. Do you know where I am right now? Maxine Waters' $6 million mansion. Do you know where I'm not right now? Maxine Waters District. Yep, that's right. Maxine does not live in her district, but I do. I was born right here in South LA, in a place Maxine refuses to live. Maxine Waters does not drink our water, she does not breathe our air, and while she sits here in her mansion, our district is in ruins. Let me show you. This is South LA. I was born here. I grew up on 104th and Normandy. Maxine Waters has been in office for 44 years. Has anything got better around here? I can tell you firsthand that it hasn't.
Now, Joe, the reason I play that specific clip is because I think it speaks to a lot of cities, particularly large cities in the United States. When in your life did it become apparent to you, like it had for me a few years ago, that a lot of the problems that face these communities, like the ones where you grow up to, seem to be in this course where they're electing the same politicians decade after decade. The list of cities is kind of endless off the top of my head. I listed Chicago, St. Louis, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Detroit. These are places that have had Democrats in charge for 30 years, even more in some places. Why do people keep voting for them if they're getting the same results?
I think that when you vote for somebody because that person looks like you and because that person is saying things that you want to hear, it becomes like a social norm. Like it's normal to vote Maxine in the office. It's normal to vote Alcee Hazens in the office, knowing that these people has never done anything for you because they've just been there for so long. So I think that's the biggest reason why.
Now, how do you convince the people that are in these areas, if they haven't seen it by now, how do you convince them that, look, nothing has changed? Why don't you try something that has an argument that has a little bit more depth? I mean, like I mentioned, there's arguments against crime, there's arguments against racism and homelessness, but none of this really seems to change over the course of 30, 40 years. How do you convince these people or get them to see in these areas that what they're voting for isn't working?
Well, a lot of people in inner cities have trust issues, and so that's why it's hard to get them to move on to something new. And what you got to do is you just have to be there. You have to show them that the things that they're going through isn't normal. I used to think that gang violence growing up in the inner city was normal until I got out of it and I started going across the world, traveling across the United States, and seeing that gang violence is not normal, poverty isn't normal, and it's what been going on for a very long time.
Now, I mean, we can harp on Maxine Waters a lot, and it's part of a larger issue, so I want to play her famous clip of when she's, this restaurant and all these things, and all the stuff she says. Justin, can we play that? Because, again, I think this stuff resonates almost timelessly, at least for at least a few more years, so long as Joe Biden's in office. Let's throw to that clip.
Already, you have members of your cabinet that are being booed out of restaurants, who have protesters taking up at their house, who's saying no peace, no sleep. No peace, no sleep. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
She's really a cartoon character, isn't she? Now, there's been so much talk lately around Trump and the alleged incitement of violence. They want to impeach him for a second time. But whether it's this clip or the kick them when they're down clip and all the clips that arose for the past 3 years, there's plenty of examples. Is it extremely hypocritical of them to try to claim that Trump's the one inciting violence now?
Oh yeah, of course it is, because we've seen Black Lives Matter and Antifa destroy entire cities over the past year, and that clip that you showed from Maxine Waters, that's actually relevant because she sent people to our events while we were running for Congress with guns and things like that to intimidate me and my team.
Can you elaborate a bit on that? So people, was it a group? Was it a specific group? Was it just random people? They sent them there. They had guns on them, or what?
Yeah, she sent people from, I think it was Watts, I think it was like 4 men to one of our events. I have it recorded. It's on social media. We were having a backpack giveaway and a food drive, and she sent the guys there to try and intimidate me. And one of the guys had 2 guns, and it was just like wow, really, at a family event, this is what you do. After we de-escalated the situation, my team caught up with him and asked him who sent them, and they showed the email where one of her chief of staff, had them come up to our event.
Wow, that's crazy. I'm gonna have to get that video from you. Do you think that Joe Biden's administration wants to bring Americans together? Like I mentioned, there's so many times where they're dehumanizing Trump supporters. They're calling them. They've gone as far as call a lot of them terrorists now. Do you think they actually want people to come together, or does it matter for them?
No, they don't want people to come together at all. This never been their agenda is to bring people together. They talk trash to get into office. They talk trash about Trump supporters. Mind you, it's about 75 million people who support Trump. And now Joe Biden's talking about he want peace. He's talking this and that, but I don't believe anything he says. He's lied so many times. He said he's not going to rule by executive order. First day in office, 17 executive orders. He didn't do anything for the black community. He just gave a pass to 11 million immigrants and told everybody across the United States, you got 100 days to come to the United States and we're going to give you a citizenship. He's allowed little boys to participate in little girls' sports. And so we see what the agenda is for the Biden administration, and it's not unity.
Yeah, I don't think anyone could have anticipated that Biden would work faster than Trump with more executive orders, far more. It just so happens they're terrible decisions, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, talking about Biden, he just signed some executive orders, and I want to get your opinion on this and how they claim that they're going to address what he calls systemic racism. So if we could bring some of those up, Justin, I want to read them off to you, Joe, and get your reaction. Direct the Department of Justice to not renew contract with private prisons, order Department of Housing to fully implement Fair Housing Act, push federal agencies for more regularly meaningful talk with tribal governments, direct Health and Human Services as well as COVID-19 Health Equity Task Force to examine the best practices to protect Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders as part of relief efforts. Now, Joe, I want to show you a clip of what Joe Biden has to say about this, and then I want to get your reaction to those executive orders.
The moment it arrived as a nation where we face deep racial inequities in America and systemic racism that has plagued our nation for far, far too long. I said that over the course of the past year that the blinders have been taken off the nation, the American people. What many Americans didn't see or had simply refused to see couldn't be ignored any longer. Those 8 minutes and 46 seconds that took George Floyd's life opened the eyes of millions of Americans and millions of people around all over the world. It was the knee on the neck of justice, and it wouldn't be forgotten.
Now, Joe, I don't know what George Floyd has to do with any of these executive orders, but it sounds to me, just by reading them, as you can see, that they're more about Native Americans and Pacific Islanders getting disaster relief in neighboring islands. How does this address systemic racism at all?
Well, he does have the one that allows the Department of Justice to renew private contracts to prisons. I mean, that facilitates black racial inequality right there. Put more black people in prison because that's what private prison industrial complex does. But nothing that Joe Biden says ever makes sense, and nothing that he says will ever resonate with me or anybody in the black community. I think he's trash.
Now, is it ironic? Do you think it's ironic coming from Joe Biden? Because I've made a lot of videos about him, and when I go back in the history of him in office, a lot of the stuff's very hard to find. He's got all these weird statements from the past, which I think that he doesn't believe are racist, but they certainly sound very racist. I mean, he's known as the father of the crime bill, and by the end of his term, that'll be 12 out of 16 years where Joe Biden's in the White House. How come things have not gotten better in terms of racial inequality or racial justice in the U.S.?
Well, because Joe Biden is the epitome of white supremacy in the United States. I mean, when you look at every single thing that Joe Biden has ever done, it has never been to help anybody of any racial ethnic background. I mean, you look at the 94 crime bill, that was all him. He was there whenever Jim Crow was enacted. He walked with the Grand Wizard from the Ku Klux Klan. Even under Obama as a vice president, he still didn't do anything except for allow his son to run around to different countries and extort them. So, I mean, Joe Biden, he's legitimately trash, and I don't know why people voted for him.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff, I don't know if the viewers know this, and I don't know how much of you've seen, but besides the obvious one about busing, he's got stuff where he was friends with extreme racists, extreme segregationists who said, you know, Joe, whether it's supporting you or coming out against you, I'll do whatever you want to help you out. He said he got along great with that guy, and he was he literally said black people are an inferior race. And then there's the other guy who was the last Dixiecrat to run for president. He got along great with him. So For a guy who's got all these stories about how much he's beloved in the black community, he sure got a lot of shady connections. Joe, how do you think they square this with the public? Is it just a matter of don't ask, don't tell? I mean, Kamala Harris, she's got her background in her profession of putting people in jail. Joe Biden, he's got his background. How do they pull the wool over the eyes of people? And I know I'm sounding really biased here, but this is just I didn't come into this thinking I'm going to find that he's racist and they're all doing this stuff. This is just based on my own research. How do they square this with the public, or is it just a matter of hiding it?
Well, that's what the mainstream media is for. They kind of sway opinions based on a type of propaganda that they push out. They push out that Trump was a racist and Joe Biden was the best thing since sliced bread, and it's actually the reverse. Joe Biden was a racist, and President Trump was actually good for America. I mean, you got to think. Trump was telling Black America, Latinos, and Asians, what do you want me to do? I got $500 billion of platinum plan here. I'll let you guys start businesses and stuff like that. Tell me what you need, and I'm gonna get it done. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's on a Zoom call with civil rights leaders, staying the hell with y'all. I run on a platform nobody thought would work, so I don't need y'all. Y'all gonna compete with the Mexicans. That's exactly what he said. So,
yeah, and a lot of people look past that the billions of dollars that you mentioned. I mean, there was a meeting he had with black leaders in the White House, and they said the hardest, I forget what her name was, I don't want to get it wrong, but a woman there said that the hardest part about getting this money to the inner cities is getting it past the Democrat leaders who run this city and getting it to the actual business owners and people that need the money. So that's the end of our YouTube segment, Joe. If you guys viewing want to watch the entire interview, we've got exclusive content coming up. Go to rebelnewsplus.com and sign up for just $8 a month. We're going to talk about Joe's favorite subject, and that's Don Lemon and the mainstream media. I think he's got a lot to say on that, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching Andrew Says. If you want to see the full uncut version, go to rebelnewsplus.com and sign up today so you can see the entire episode where we talk about topics we can't show you on YouTube. They'll ban us.